Delivering prosperity in Africa calls for strong collaborations between African governments and business leaders where enablers of trade and growth are identified and built. Delivering prosperity in Africa calls for actionable and bankable policies that bring value addition to our vast resources. And because delivering prosperity in Africa matters, the Africa Prosperity Dialogues 2024 is themed Produce, Add Value, Trade. Join African heads of states and top business leaders from the 25th to the 27th of January at the Peduase Presidential Lodge, Ebri Hills, Eastern Region, Ghana. On the evening of the 26th of January, there will be the Africa Prosperity Champions Awards and Gala Dinner at the Kempinski Hotel, where African and global African leaders will be celebrated and awarded. Africa Prosperity Dialogues 2024, Delivering Prosperity in Africa. Delivering prosperity in Africa calls for strong collaborations between African governments and business leaders where enablers of trade and growth are identified and built. Delivering prosperity in Africa calls for actionable and bankable policies that bring value addition to our vast resources. And because delivering prosperity in Africa matters, the Africa Prosperity Dialogues 2024 is themed Produce, Add Value, Trade. Join African heads of states and top business leaders from the 25th to the 27th of January at the Peduase Presidential Lodge, Ebri Hills, Eastern Region, Ghana. On the evening of the 26th of January, there will be the Africa Prosperity Champions Awards and Gala Dinner at the Kempinski Hotel, where African and global African leaders will be celebrated and awarded.
Assurer la prospérité en Afrique nécessite des politiques concrètes et rentables qui apportent une valeur ajoutée à nos vastes ressources. Assurer la prospérité en Afrique nécessite une collaboration solide entre les gouvernements africains et les chefs d'entreprise où les catalyseurs du commerce et de la croissance sont identifiés et développés. Et parce qu'il est important d'assurer la prospérité en Afrique, les dialogues sur la prospérité en Afrique 2024 ont pour thème produire, valoriser, échanger. Rejoignez les chefs d'État africains et les dirigeants d'entreprises majeures du 25 au 27 janvier à la loge présidentielle des Peduase à Ebri, au Ghana. Dans la soirée du 26 janvier auront lieu les Africa Prosperity Champions Awards et un dîner de gala à l'hôtel Kempinski, où les dirigeants africains et africains du monde entier seront récompensés. Les dialogues sur la prospérité en Afrique 2024, assurer la prospérité en Afrique. Produire, valoriser, échanger. Assurer la prospérité en Afrique nécessite des politiques concrètes et rentables qui apportent une valeur ajoutée à nos vastes ressources. Assurer la prospérité en Afrique nécessite une collaboration solide entre les gouvernements africains et les chefs d'entreprise où les catalyseurs du commerce et de la croissance sont identifiés et développés. Et parce qu'il est important d'assurer la prospérité en Afrique, les dialogues sur la prospérité en Afrique 2024 ont pour thème produire, valoriser, échanger. Rejoignez les chefs d'État africains et les dirigeants d'entreprises majeures du 25 au 27 janvier à la loge présidentielle des Peduase à Ebri, au Ghana. Dans la soirée du 26 janvier auront lieu les Africa Prosperity Champions Awards et un dîner de gala en
Delivering prosperity in Africa calls for strong collaborations between African governments and business leaders where enablers of trade and growth are identified and built. Delivering prosperity in Africa calls for actionable and bankable policies that bring value addition to our vast resources. And because delivering prosperity in Africa matters, Teen Africa.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome back from lunch. Kindly take your seats. The Chief of Staff is here. She's seated. So kindly take your seats so we resume the conversation on manufacturing. Thank you very much. Thank you very kindly. Are we all seated? Okay, all right. So, good afternoon to you all. Welcome back from lunch. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did, and I'll be giving my feedback to the catering crew. That said, kindly scan the QR code and fill out your feedback. It will help us make subsequent editions of the Prosperity Dialogue a success. Thank you very much. My name is Araba Kumsin. I'm a broadcast journalist. I'm also an agric entrepreneur. Welcome to the second session of day 2 of the African Prosperity Dialogues 2024. It's an absolute pleasure to be your mistress of ceremonies as we look forward to engaging in critical, captivating, and consequential conversations with our esteemed leaders in industry and social change makers discussing strategies that would enable businesses on the continent, particularly manufacturers, to the opportunity to enjoy the open market and, of course, trade seamlessly. We'll be hearing from another panel on the critical enablers for building a single market on the continent of Africa, with specific reference to manufacturing. But before that, let's take a short presentation on interoperability. As you know, interoperability is about roaming and systems, and it's essentially about tech. And to be able to control that sector, we need to educate our young folks. And STEM education does just that. To give us a presentation on the essence of STEM education, help me to welcome Andrew Nolan. He is Senior Education Specialist, Planet One, our lead sponsor. A round of applause for him, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Esteemed guests, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and privilege to have the opportunity on behalf of Planet One Group to address you today about STEM education and its value addition to economy and trade. As an educator and someone who is a STEM graduate and a former science teacher, it's a subject that is very close to my heart. So the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which was classed as transforming our world, set 17 SDGs to tackle global issues such as poverty, climate, food shortage, planetary protection, and to ensure that individuals enjoy peace, prosperity, and quality of life. Education, and particularly STEM, plays a crucial role in achieving these. STEM seeks to find and provide solutions to these issues. In particular, there's at least 9 SDGs where STEM is directly related to their solutions, and another 2 of them are highly dependent upon STEM education. In the context of Industry 4.0, STEM and its contribution is crucial. Since the very first Industrial Revolution, economic growth throughout the world has depended upon science, engineering, and technical innovation. As things stand, we're currently in the 4th round of Industrial Revolution. Then, building off of this digital revolution, so that's the explosion in electronics, IT, automation, this new wave is starting to blur the boundaries between physical, digital, and biological worlds. And then when we look at experts such as the World Economic Forum, they have stated clearly that countries that are the best prepared for this 4th Industrial Revolution and can adapt to its challenges will be the best able to compete. It's widely agreed that solutions to the challenges that the world faces today will require multidisciplinary scientific workforce equipped with skill sets that encompass new technologies and interdisciplinary thinking. And these may or may not require the integration of multiple STEM concepts. It's also widely agreed that there is an imperative to train and prepare a diverse STEM literate workforce with the capability to understand and comprehend the technological world. These include the focus on developing what we would class as transversal skill sets, such as cognitive skills, understanding, process, dealing with information, that's analysis and interpretation of data, problem solving and engineering thinking, so the ability to deconstruct problems into their parts, the scientific process, understanding how to be methodical about our investigations, computational thinking and ICT, things like coding, design thinking, creativity, innovation, manipulative motor and technical skills. That's the ability to use machines and devices. And most importantly, on the layer on top of that is collaboration and communication, to share our points and our understanding to others. Ergo, it stands that countries that prioritize STEM will inevitably perform better than those that do not in all economical, technological, and social spheres. It's not a choice to have a qualified STEM workforce, but an obligation. Locally, if we look at the context of sub-Saharan Africa, there's a shortage of over 2.5 million engineers alone. There's a clear issue here in the sense of demand is outstripping supply. As only 25% of students who attend university in the region study STEM subjects, this gap is going to increase and continually compound. In order to address this shortfall, we have to ask ourselves some difficult questions. Why don't students choose STEM? What's stopping students from being engaged in STEM? And studies show that the quality of STEM in schools is actually the predetermining factor in whether students will be interested in pursuing STEM in the first instance. Often, sadly, STEM is not delivered in a way which is relevant or has sufficient rigor. It results in disengaged students. Then you add the other impression. A lot of us, I'm sure many of us remember our science lessons and maths lessons from school. It was a pretty tough subject. So it has the impression it's a tough subject and it's often not taught in a good way. We also have a gender skew, quite significant gender skew in university courses. There is a significantly large proportion of those that take STEM careers who are male and very few female. So we have these issues of stereotypes. We have the lack of engaging programs as a significant root problem. When you couple this with inadequate resources, facilities, laboratories, and environments for learning, the motivation to pursue STEM falls even further. So where we come into the equation, so organizations much like ourselves, like Planet One, we believe very strongly that you must put the conditions for success in place in order for a nation to make progress. As an organization, we work with around 12 to 15 nations across Africa with partners such as Oxford University, Helsinki University, to deliver holistic change. So that's from the buildings, facilities, curricula, teacher training, teacher preparation and programs, and the digital systems that underpin this. In Ghana alone, we have delivered a full overhaul of the TVET systems, building 37 VTIs and redesigning curriculum. Enrollment has almost tripled in the last 3 years and is expected to increase sixfold in total by 2025. We are proud to be continuing this impactful work in the foundation of polytechnics in Ghana too. As an organization, we are very strong proponents of STEM. We do not just work in education. We work in agriculture, mining, and energy. And it's testament to the fact that as an organization, we actually do not just talk the talk about STEM, we walk the walk. We thank the organizers for this forum, and we look forward to constructive dialogue and progress for the region. Thank you. The video.
The inspiration behind Planet One Group is our philosophy from imagination to impact. This principle drives us to continually innovate creatively and efficiently, thereby delivering solutions which positively impact the lives of people around the world. Planet One Group has made positive impacts on developing societies through our innovations in education, agriculture, energy, and natural resources, sectors which play pivotal roles in laying the foundation for the rapid growth and prosperity of nations. Today, we're proud to have delivered successful societal outcomes across North America, United Kingdom, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Education. Planet One Education enables governments to bring nationwide transformation to their education systems. Its solutions provide a better future across the globe by implementing innovations for the entire education spectrum, from K-12 to employability and higher education. Our interventions address the key educative challenges through accessibility and inclusion, increasing capacity and enrollment, enhanced learning experience, improving employability by leveraging our holistic implementation model involving infrastructure development, technology-enabled teaching and learning solutions, new age content delivery, and competency-based training solutions. Agriculture. The ability to transform agriculture into a productive and thriving pillar of an economy is at the heart of our agriculture offering, which reinvigorates the entire agriculture value chain. Planet One helps governments create well-equipped, technologically advanced facilities that support many small and marginal farmers, improving their yields and incomes. By developing sustainable farm service centers, we empower these marginal farmers across the entire value chain of agriculture, training them in resilient production and processing techniques, providing access to modern agricultural mechanization, increasing coverage of storage facilities, empowering farmers with provision of processing facilities, and securing long-term offtake financing. Natural resources. Planet One Natural Resources is a global mining company focusing on future-enabling metals and minerals for a cleaner, greener world and to meet the everyday demands of billions of consumers. Engineering, procurement, and construction. Our EPC and Engineering Solutions business unit spearheads sustainable infrastructure development projects in various countries. Our highly experienced professional teams execute large infrastructure projects from ideation to commissioning on a turnkey basis with single-source responsibility. We take pride in our impeccable delivery track record with various governments worldwide.
Ladies and gentlemen, the project has been completed. It has been delivered. I'm happy to state that in spite of the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, Planet One Group has successfully completed the project on time.
Positive social impact and sustained growth are the heart of each project that Planet One undertakes.
Africa Prosperity Dialogues 2024's Strategic, Institutional and Knowledge Partners. United Nations in Ghana. World Food Programme WFP. United Nations Development Programme UNDP. Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa BADEA. Africa Business Council AFBC. Afrexim Bank. African Development Bank AFDB. United Nations Economic Commission on Africa ECA. Africa America Institute AAI. Africa Soft Power. Oxford Business Group OBG. Ghana Investment Promotion Center GIPC. Recognizing our lead sponsors: 3i Summit 2024, Planet One, KGL Group, MTN, Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa BADEA, Ghana Maritime, Central Oil Refinery, Tetracor. Recognizing our sponsors. Recognizing our media partners.
And so we begin the second session, and as time is fast spent, I will proceed to delve straight into the discussion, which is how can we fund manufacturing boom in Africa and enable players in the manufacturing industry to enjoy the open market within the continent and, of course, trade seamlessly. Join me in welcoming our panelists, and we start with Mohammed Abu El Aynan. He's chairman of the Cleopatra Group. A round of applause for him, please. Mohammed Abu El Aynan is a renowned Egyptian businessman, investor, public figure, and an accomplished politician. Founder and chairman of Cleopatra Group, he has established many major projects spread all over Egypt. Mr. Abu El Aynan's role as a member of parliament for over 15 years, actively contributing to the growth of the district he represented and served, made him a well-known and much appreciated celebrity. He received several international awards and certificate of honor for his commitment in various fields of businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, Mohammed Abu El Aynan. Thank you very much, sir. Also joining us on the panel is Madam Nora Bannerman. I'm sure you all know her. She is no stranger to most of you Ghanaians. She is an accomplished entrepreneur with a wealth of experience spanning over 40 years in the textile industry. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Nora Bannerman Abbott. Thank you very much, ma'am. Our next panelist is in the person of Jeffrey Pepra. He's CEO of Volkswagen Ghana. Mr. Pepra is a highly motivated, dynamic entrepreneur and self-starting professional employee at a senior management level of an international global automotive company with wide span of working experience within Europe, West Africa, Central and South Africa. He has entrepreneurship and strategic leadership competencies with experience in the automotive industry, supply chain management and logistics, as well as sales and business development. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeffrey Pepra. Our next panelist is in the person of Ambassador Amina Mohammed. She is a highly accomplished and dedicated international civil servant with an illustrious career spanning over 26 years. Yes. Having served in prominent government roles and holding key international positions, she has demonstrated her expertise in diplomacy, strategic leadership, and international relations. Rising through the ranks in Kenya's diplomatic service, she reached the pinnacle as ambassador or permanent representative to the UN at Geneva Commonwealth, Director Diaspora, and permanent secretary at the Ministry of Justice, National Cohesion, and Constitutional Affairs. A round of applause for her, please. Our next panelist is in the person of Sebastian Spio-Gabra. He's been adjudged as one of the world's leading frontier markets political risk analysts and was voted among the top 30 under 30 analysts by New York's Institutional Investor magazine in 2006. Sebastian helped establish the Africa Risk Research practice at the leading global political risk consultancy firm Eurasia Group, LLC, in New York, London, and Tokyo, and concurrently served as a sovereign risk analyst on sub-Saharan Africa's two largest economies, Nigeria and South Africa, for a novel global stability index developed by Eurasia Group with Lehman Brothers, among others. A round of applause for him, please. Also joining us on the panel is Ogbemi Ofuya. He is a principal, Helios Investment Partners. Now, Mr. Ogbemi is responsible for a portfolio of investments spanning upstream oil and gas, energy infrastructure, and distributed power generation. Prior to Helios, he worked in the Natural Resources Investment Banking Division of Goldman Sachs International, where he executed M&A, debt and equity transactions across the oil, gas, power, and mining sectors, with a particular focus on Africa. Mr. Ogbemi Ofuya, everybody. Thank you very much. Do we have Madam Linda Amper here? Our next panelist is Madam Linda Amper. If she's here, could you join us on the panel? Okay. All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. These are your panelists. A round of applause for them again. Very soon, we'll hear from the president of the West African Development Bank, Serge Ekwe. But before I do that, let me introduce to you the moderator for this panel. He is in the person of Patrick Smith. He's editor-in-chief of the Africa Report. A round of applause for him, please. As I indicated earlier, the panel will be speaking on the critical enablers for building a single market on the African continent with specific reference to manufacturing. But before that, let's watch this video and then we'll continue from there. All right, we'll bring you the video shortly, but let me call on President of the West African Development Bank, Mr. Serge Ekwe. A round of applause for him, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Serge Ekwe is President of the West African Development Bank. Since prior to joining the bank, he served as Natixis Corporate and Investment Banking Country Manager for the UK in London since 2016. He combined this position with that of Head of Global Markets for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. In addition, Mr. Ekwe was previously Head of Natixis Africa and Russia departments. A well-known expert in financial and capital markets, Mr. Ekwe managed Natixis Global Markets for the Asia-Pacific region for nearly 6 years. Mr. Ekwe, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Your Excellency, I'm Chief of Staff of President of the Republic of Ghana. Excellency, former Prime Minister of the Republic of Gabon. Your Excellency, President of Badea, ladies and gentlemen, in your respective positions, distinguished guests. It is truly an honor, a pleasure and honor for me to stand before you and address a team of paramount importance. And I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the organizers for precisely organizing this quality event, and for extending a gracious invitation to BEWAD, the West African Development Bank. Critical enablers to drive Africa's prosperity through manufacturing, smart market access strategies, and enabling incentives. It is definitely a compelling theme that sets the stage for today's discourse. In our shared pursuit of prosperous and industrially resilient Africa, this chosen topic holds immense significance. It serves as a beacon guiding our explorations of a crucial factor that will propel Africa's economic growth and foster industrial advancement. Allow me, please, to shed light on the current situation. The manufacturing industry in Africa through market strides modestly contributes to value creation, modestly. Over the past decade, the share manufacturing added value in Africa GDP has set marginal increase from 10.5% in 2012 to 12.5% in 2021. A stark contrast is evident when compared to Asia and Europe, boosting shares around respectively 23% and 26%. Despite this, Africa global export share has decreased, falling from 3.4% in 2012 to 2.7% in 2022, largely driven by raw materials exports. And in contrast, Asia's share has steadily increased to 43% in 2022, up to 45% from 2022 from 40%. And this primarily due to the increase of exports of manufactured goods. The historical trajectory of developed nations attests that sustained growth requires structural transformations. This shift involves reorientation production and exports towards high value-added products, moving away from reliance on basic commodities. While industrialization has been a key development catalyst, Africa has the opportunity to chart our own course, drawing lessons from others. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, to counter the current trends, innovative strategies and accelerated structural reforms are imperatives. This includes promoting economic diversification, bolder transformation policies for industrialization, and enhancing competitiveness through measures such as cost reduction, narrowing the digital divide, improve financial inclusion, and deepening financial market to facilitate SMEs financing. Commendedly, the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCA, stands as a powerful tool to stimulate intra-Africa trade, propel industrialization, and facilitate Africa's structural transformation. The AFCA is poised to foster new trade practices and innovative approaches to production, work, and exchange within Africa, and not only with Africa, I would even say more globally. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we embark on this transformative journey, may I suggest some ways forward for the various stakeholders, including governments, the private sector, and the banking and financial industry. First of all, for governments, adopting robust industrialization policies at national and regional levels that will definitely streamline regulatory frameworks, improve the business climate, and invest in critical infrastructure. In the private sector, the journey involves investing in the 21st century's human capital for manufacturing and embracing clean production processes in terms of renewable energy, waste management, pollution control, among others, and that align with the consumer demand. The financial industry is a crucial player, and the financial industry, as a crucial player, must pioneer innovative financing instruments. mobilize resources through market-based instrument and finance smart and integrated infrastructure. Development can only be financed with adequate resources. It is important to have long-term resources at concessional rates. It is also important to work on strengthening equity, which would allow, through leverage effects, mobilize additional resources in debt and finance, and that will definitely enhance our ambition and support our ambition project over the long term. And as an example, the investment made by Badea into the capital of BOAD, owning now 1% of our Tier 1 capital and investing $100 million in a hybrid callable transaction, this is the way to go. And I would, as president of BOAD, encourage any head of institution willing to do the same to follow the path, and I will be the first supporter, as you can reckon. In conclusion, the path of Africa's prosperity through manufacturing demands collective commitment, innovative strategies, and strategic collaboration even within intra-Africa strategic collaborations. Together, we can drive the industrial renaissance that our continent envisions, leveraging the Africa and capitalizing on the rich potential that resides within our diverse nation. I wish you a very, very productive and fruitful discussions. Thank you very much.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. That was Mr. Serge Ekwe. A round of applause for him again, ladies and gentlemen. Very shortly, the panel will begin the discussion, but before that, let's take a short video from the Imagine project on manufacturing.
The Africa Prosperity Network, in collaboration with the KGL Group, present the Imagine Project, Transforming the Continent. In the heart of Africa lies a transformative initiative being led by the Africa Prosperity Dialogues in capturing the essence of the African dream. It aspires to propel the continent towards prosperity through actionable policies and bankable projects, empowering Africa beyond aid. Imagine policies fostering raw material transformation within Africa, envisioning specialized regional production and manufacturing hubs, fueling our integration into global value chains. With 60% of the world's most fertile yet uncultivated soils, its future is boundless. The continent's agricultural output is anticipated to soar from $280 billion annually to a staggering $1 trillion by the year 2030. Picture Africa refining its resources, oil refineries in Nigeria, platinum in Zimbabwe, copper in Zambia, lithium in Ghana, coltan in the Democratic Republic of Congo, bauxite refineries in Guinea, leveraging industrial advancements to harness the potential of our natural resources effectively. Imagine an interconnected rail network, reducing logistics costs and promoting seamless travel across Africa. Imagine an advanced infrastructure propelling intra-Africa trade. The Imagine project emphasizes STEM education and interoperable systems, where roaming charges are a thing of the past and common payment platform facilitates transactions wherever you are. It envisions regional hubs for electrification, connecting landlocked countries to coastal areas through an African rail network. Picture Africa with its own financial governance, rating agencies and continental stock exchanges, paving the way for self-sustained growth and reducing reliance on foreign investments. Imagine an Africa with seamless financial transactions, common mobile money platforms, and a unified banking system promoting financial inclusion across the continent. The Imagine project envisions policies supporting African manufacturers, democratizing central bank digital currencies for intra-African trade, and prioritizing access to open markets. Africa's renaissance is underway, a continent unlocking its vast potential across agriculture, mining, technology, oil and gas, industrialization, youth empowerment, and financial sectors. The Imagine project, a realistic vision charting Africa's journey towards a prosperous future. Let's unleash Africa's prosperity and shape the continent's destiny. Delivering prosperity in Africa, produce, add value, trade.
Right, the stage has been set, the context has been set, and our panelists are ready. So without wasting much time, let's hand over to Mr. Patrick Smith, Editor-in-Chief of the Africa Report, to moderate this session. Patrick.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got about half an hour between you getting on to the next bit of the fun proceedings of the day. So we're going to go through a quick fire question and answer session with the panelists. And I wanted to start with Mr. Ogbemi Ofuya from Helios Investments. And we wanted to start on the issue of the links between the energy sector in Africa and manufacturing. And, you know, one thing that is slightly puzzling about the energy sector at the moment, there is this big push for green resources and the green revolution around the world. And I think 5 years ago, the European Union was setting all these tough rules on countries producing oil and gas in Africa. They should stop doing it and they should start using solar panels instead. Then suddenly someone in Moscow invaded Ukraine, and now they're coming to Africa to buy the oil and gas from Africa. And we've seen 4 big projects starting up in Africa: Senegal, Mozambique, Tanzania, and Namibia now as the new gas territories. Now that's very exciting, but at the same time, what is happening to the old gas and oil territories? What about Nigeria? Nigeria has the biggest gas reserves in Africa, I think 7th or 8th biggest in the world. What about Libya? What about Algeria? What about Angola? Could you say something about how you see the investment outlook for for Africa's oil and gas industry and what that can do to help manufacturing on the continent?
Thank you very much. That's a pretty dense question, and I'll do my best to unpack it. I think when we talk about manufacturing and the single African market and the vision we are all trying to work to achieve here in this conference, I think energy is a critical input to the manufacturing process. And the objective of each manufacturer here is to have the most competitive inputs, whether it's energy, whether it's logistics or raw materials, in order to achieve a price point for their product that is more competitive than the imported equivalent. And that's what will grow manufacturing in Africa. And so I think despite the short-term issues about the energy crisis globally, Africa still has a natural advantage because it's not just blessed with oil and gas, as you've mentioned. Well, Africa is blessed with significant hydro resources, renewable resources, you know, and solar and wind. And so even though the rules like the carbon border tax, which has been put in place by the EU to penalize carbon-rich exports, might seem like a short-term disadvantage to Africa. I feel long-term that's actually a competitive advantage for Africa if we can harness the resources we have to drive cleaner manufacturing and be advantageously positioned for Europe, which is, next door, right? It's not as far as Asia, for example. Sure. And so that's a challenge. How do we grow investment in traditional energy like gas? How do we ensure we use that properly? But how do we also accelerate the growth of cleaner forms of energy to support greener manufacturing, which will make our exports more competitive? So, overall, it is still an opportunity for Africa. We have the geographic advantage. We have the advantage of the lower labor costs. And I think the question is, how do we make sure we partner with our manufacturing companies to accelerate their growth, both for domestic consumption in Africa and for exports to the rest of the world?
So you see a future for the oil and gas industry long-term in Africa, both in terms of exports, but also in terms of domestic power requirements?
Oh yes, and I think even more so for domestic, because Africa today is still a net importer of energy. And so the domestic market is huge, and the opportunity remains there to increase the penetration of our regional resources, for example, gas, which you mentioned, drive that penetration into the rest of the continent, which is, investments we are closely working with, various countries in the region to achieve, which we've done successfully in Ghana, and we want to try to replicate that across the region. So definitely, even if the focus is just on the African domestic market, there's more than enough scope to increase energy consumption, and we have the resources to match that increased demand.
And that issue, in the very dense question, as you rightly pointed out, what about the traditional, the longer-term African energy industries in Algeria, Angola, Nigeria, Libya? Well, why isn't money going into them? What's the story there?
I think globally, there's been a flight to quality. Guyana, Namibia, as you pointed out, is taking a lot of capital, and US oil and gas. But we still have an opportunity. Despite the reduced pools of capital, I think it's actually an opportunity for African financial institutions, African banks, African pension funds, African lenders to participate in the growth of the regional and domestic oil and gas industry, which still offers attractive returns. So yes, foreign capital has fled, the majors have pulled back, but I think that creates an opportunity for domestic capital, domestic players to step in to fill that void, in which I think remains a multi-decade opportunity for Africa to tap its own resources for its economic growth.
And so, last question. This latest news that Shell is quitting the onshore and shallow waters in the Niger Delta and selling to a Nigerian consortium of companies, you regard that as positive news because it's going to be a boost for the domestic oil industry in Nigeria?
Oh yes, long-term positive. I mean, it's a long-term positive. It's a natural progression with the way the majors are set up. When markets or fields mature, they hand them over to independents. That's how the US shale revolution started. It wasn't started by an oil major. It was started by independents. So it's positive news. We feel these independents are more energized. They're more locally aligned and in tune with the needs of what's on ground. And they can get to oil, quicker and cheaper. So long-term positive, short-term they require capital to grow. But I think if we partner with our domestic and regional institutions, that could be a long-term success story.
So Helios might even be in there with them?
Yes, we will do this especially on the gas and midstream side, which is where we're focused. Gas, midstream, and renewables. Less on the upstream, but we see ourselves as a partner to all these institutions operating in the energy complex across Africa.
Thanks very much, Ogbe. Madam Ambassador, thanks very much for that. Last time we spoke, you were running for the Director General post of the World Trade Organization. I know you've been involved in the organization a long time. Since then, you've been Minister of Foreign Affairs. You've dealt extensively with the foreign trade portfolio for your own country, Kenya. I wanted to raise with you the problems that we're seeing in the WTO about the dispute resolution processes and so on. Do you have fears that the African continental free trade area could face the same sort of deadlocks when countries battle it out over rules of origin, the arguments over intellectual property and services and so on? Or do you think because it's all one big family under the African Union, it should be able to iron it out quickly?
Well, thank you very much. It's been such a long time that I ran for that office, and we have an amazing African sister who is now heading it and who would probably have responded much more appropriately to that question. But yes, I am a multilateral trade negotiator. I am also a regional trade negotiator, and I don't see one being exclusive of the other.
Right.
After all, the rules that we developed for the African Free Trade Agreement were based on the World Trade Organization rules because we have to be compliant. Most of Africa is part of the World Trade Organization. In fact, the largest part of the World Trade Organization is African countries. There are 44 members right now in the World Trade Organization. So anything that we do on the continent must, to a large extent, be compliant to those rules that were established. Look, I don't think that we would face the same issues on the continent as the WTO is facing, for many reasons, many of them historic. The way it was founded, who negotiated the rules, when the rules were negotiated. Many of them, I think, need to be reworked. Some to a large extent, others to a smaller extent. But they need to conform to the technological revolution that we've seen happening. When they were developed, that did not exist. And that's why when I was there, I actually insisted as ambassador that we needed to include e-commerce negotiations in the package, because we could see that coming. We knew that for the African continent, it was going to be key in the development and marketing of the products that we develop on the continent, especially if it's products that are developed by our SMEs. And so I don't see, to answer that question, I don't see us having the same issues, because we are developing our rules at a time when we are fully cognizant and recognize the role that the digital economy actually plays. I think that our problem is going to be of a different sort. I'm a little bit, I think, sad that all the members of the AU have not signed up and ratified the agreement. I think we need to do that, and do that really quickly, because I think it's going to be one of the main avenues for the salvation of our economies. There is absolutely no way that we can continue to grow in silos. And I just want to pay tribute to the Secretary General Omkele, because he has done an amazing job in just transversing the continent, talking up the CFTA, and telling us why there is no other option than to make sure that we implement it, and that we implement it very, very quickly. So again, I don't see the same issues arising. We may have a different set of issues as we move along. The trade, the World WTO dispute settlement, organ, sad that it has come to what it has come to now. I think it was really the jewel in the crown of the WTO, because it was a system that was completely, circular. You negotiated the rules, you developed them, you implemented them within the same organization, and if you had any disputes, we actually resolved them within the organization. So I thought that was one of the things that made the WTO so attractive to so many of our countries. The other reason was because it allowed you to modernize and to reform your trade regimes within countries. And that's why you still see a number of countries queuing up to join the organization. I think 5 African countries are in the lineup. Comoros will probably be joining in February in Abu Dhabi. And so the reasons for the existence of the WTO, for the existence of the African Free Trade Agreement and for the existence of others, regional trading blocs, I think, is not in doubt. We need those organizations. They must exist. We must all ratify the CFTA.
Could I ask you about your own region? For a long while, the East African community was the cutting edge of regional integration, you know, with your free movement of people, free movement of capital. And I mean, as a journalist, I keep on seeing these fairly minor, but apparently politically significant disputes between Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. I was talking about the EAC's disputes between Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya over eggs and what have you. I'm just wondering what's going on. Is the dream being deferred, or are we going to get back on track? And what's the wider significance for the ACFTA?
I think it's still cutting edge. I think the EAC is still cutting edge. I think it's still at the forefront of a lot of things that are happening in other regional blocs. Those are all growing pains. I think we're beginning to understand the reason why we have the community in place. That we must stop thinking small, that we cannot continue to exist in silos, that we are going to trade across borders, and that these small disputes will not stop us. When I was foreign minister, I remember we had 2 or 3 such disputes. And we kind of resolved them within a matter of hours, because there's a realization that there's much more to gain than to lose. There's much more to lose than to gain from belonging to this community of countries. Look, I think that in Swahili they say that it's even the tongue and the teeth quarrel from time to time. You bite your tongue from time to time. And therefore, neighbors do that, and members of the same family do that. And you kind of learn from it and move forward. And if there are issues there that need to be addressed, then we kind of address them very, very quickly, tweak any regulations and policies that need to be tweaked, so that everybody leaves the table feeling that their issues have been considered, listened to, and addressed.
Right. Well, thanks very much. And I guess because of that experience, East Africans are particularly keen on the ACFTA.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally. I think we've all ratified it.
Great. Super. Well done. Jeffrey, I wanted to come to you. I wanted to come to you on the question of vehicle manufacturing. I know you're president of the Automobile Manufacturers Association here in Ghana, and you're also the head of Volkswagen in Ghana. I know Volkswagen, their cars are renowned around the world as being super reliable, et cetera, and they have investments in South Africa, I believe in Morocco and Nigeria. I certainly used to when I lived in Nigeria. I used to actually drive a Volkswagen, and it was very reliable, despite my bad driving. And what I wanted to ask you was, to what extent the criticism in Nigeria in those days was, oh, we're just assembling these things. We're not making cars. We're not manufacturing cars. It's not really industry. The Germans are getting all the benefit, and they're sending us their panels to sort of screw together. And I know it's moved on since then, but what sort of chances are that Africa could have a continental car industry, say, like a parallel with what's going on with the Airbus in the European Union? So France makes a wing, Germany makes the engine, Italy makes the gearbox or whatever, and it's a totally continental project. Do you think that is on the agenda? And would multinational companies, investors like Volkswagen, would they get the idea of that? Would they see that as something they should run with? Because at the end of the day, Africa is 1.4 billion people and rising, and it's a market they should be trying to compete in, surely.
No, thank you, Patrick. It's true what you're saying is, in the past, we've been talking about these assembly, but this time is really a new thing, and is really a game changer. Because what we see at the moment is, I give you an example how the Chinese started. I mean, Volkswagen in China, it started like assembly. Going back to South Africa 72 years ago, it started as an assembly, but we need to grow in certain phases. But what is going to enable this manufacturing stage to happen, where we will have a value chain across the continent, Africa, is we need policies that is going to support us, because we need some sort of partnership policies, as my ambassador was just saying. The AFTA, what we have done, is a great chance for Africa at the moment. The value chain we want to create, this is going to bring this automotive continental chain. Then, because if I'm producing Volkswagen in Ghana, that means my brothers in Ivory Coast should also be producing ties. And then we will be having also, where there's a bauxite, they can produce aluminum and for engines and also. So this needs a partnership among us, and as again, it is very critical that we can complete this rules of origin, topics that has been hanging, and then also the we're talking about local content value, because not all of us can be doing something like a full car, but we can create that value chain. That's what we see in Europe that has made them strong. Airbus is doing this, and France and Germans are doing this. But we can do the same, replicate the same thing, but we need policy advocate from our governments to push for this. It's not about this time silo thinking. It needs to be partnership that we can drive this dream that we want. Then we can do a vehicle for Africa, for our people, and also it's going to create more jobs for us. So this is a key, and I think, it's for sure, the OEMs are prepared to go this way. If we are having political will, that will drive this value chain. And then it will make our team that produce added value, and then also the last topic that we have on to work properly. So it's a partnership at the moment that will create that value chain. And we're talking about Volkswagen did something in Nigeria. It did not. It has to go back again because there were policy not really driving them. Now we started in Ghana just about 2 years now. And there's amazing speed behind it. Within a short time, we have over 7 OEMs in Ghana starting this assembling, and it's in the SKD phase. Some of our colleagues from the OEM are now going into also enhanced phase. These are the stages. So we will definitely get to the manufacturing stage where we will have this value chain, but we need policies and the speed behind the policies to implement them so that we can have a continent that product that we are all talking about. Thank you.
When you say that you want the government to back you, does that extend to making it more expensive to import finished cars from the likes of South Korea and China and now Vietnam, Malaysia? Because it seems that's the big problem, isn't it? It's the cost of what you're producing locally. And are you confident you can make that competitive in commercial terms? Or are you going to need a bit of divine intervention from, or not so divine intervention sometimes, from the government to help you compete on costs?
No, absolutely. It could be happening to have a very, I mean, if you look at Ghana at the moment, a Volkswagen or a Nissan car or whatever brand we produce here as an assembly car is relatively cheaper than importing from Asia or whatever, because there's a political will and incentives behind that you don't even pay import taxes behind it. And this is making our vehicles very more cheaper so that they could bring also affordability. I know we are working, I was happy that our ADB Bank director started with financing here. It's also something that we need to support the industry to create vehicle financing. And if we are able to have this in place, the volume, we won't think about importing any vehicle from Korea or whatever, because, and again, the nice thing about it is we do also have the raw materials here. So we are able to relocate manufacturing centers to where the raw materials are located. So this is something we all have to work together to push it. And then we will see that, because in Ghana at the moment, we talked about to reduce even use imported vehicles. If we look at Ghana at the moment, we have a data of about 120,000 car park for our vehicles here, and 70% of 120,000 vehicles are all cash paid. People have to save for years, and they go to a showroom, puts cash on the table. Sometimes not even buy electronic. He's carrying the money in the bags and come and say, I want to buy a car. This has to be changed. So if we are getting financing, that affordable financing to support our citizens, that they can afford vehicles, this industry was going to be a game changer. We might probably shift from cocoa, coffee and things, and more into manufacturing where industrial things will be happy. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much. That's great news. And now, from cars to ceramics, I wanted to turn to Mr. Mohamed Abu El Anen, who is a distinguished industrialist in Egypt and also a distinguished parliamentarian as well at the same time. That's it's a tough assignment to be both these days. But it would be interesting to work out how you've done that. We had a brief chat before you came on, and you said you wanted to see more of a plan for the continental free trade area, especially in terms of industry. I wondered if you could sketch out what you want to see, because there are a lot of people are talking about the political push that the continental free trade area needs, that everyone has to be on the same plan and joined up and coordinating policy. I know it's been a hell of a struggle in the European Union, and some say, well, they're still struggling, but they're making some progress. How do you see it playing out in Africa? How do you see the grand plan coming together in Africa?
Thank you, sir. Indeed, today I'm very glad to participate in such a great conference, and also to hear today a good news from the International Justice Court. It is very, very important for the humanity and for the people which are believing that they are above the international law. Today is a very important message to all the politicians and to United Nations and to all the countries in order to have a big support for what happened in Gaza, which affect all the continent, maybe worldwide. Thank you for this great introduction. I think 5 years ago, since 5 years ago till now, is a big importance worldwide, especially for the East, for the African continent. And the reason that they start to discover the potential of the Africa for the national resources or for the youth. Africa is a youth continent. And everybody start to make a conference, and I have been held in all these conferences, Africa with China, Africa with United States, Africa with Japan, Africa with Germany, Africa with England, in order to have this dialogue and have to see the opportunities. And I think since they start to make the FTA in action, it is a political will, and we support and we appreciate. But Until today, we don't have the investment map of Africa. And I believe the first issue is to start to promote Africa. We are African to promote it with our with our vision, with our capability worldwide, in order African people decide what they have to do. African people are capable to do a lot, and the people understand this message. I'm not happy to see the cacao in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. They are exporting with $8 billion, and the total transaction worldwide is $138 billion. As my colleague said now about the cars and automobile, it is a great industry. But how we can implement it here? How to make the specialized industrial zone in Africa? How to call the know-how and technology from outside to come in, to enter to the continent? How to create the small and medium enterprise in order to be integrated together in such an industry? How to finance this industry? How to promote the big investors, the multinational companies to come to Africa? Is the gate? It's very easy. You have to decide the map, how to start to talk about a specialized industrial zone, either for automobile, either for petrochemicals, even for most modern technology for other industries, but we need the speciality. We need to have this industrial zone with a special legislation in order to kill the bureaucracy everywhere, in order to see some legislation support the rights of these investors in this area, in order to see and create job, and also to create the education and training required for this industry. How to modify this bad idea about the Africa and what I'm talking about in the past, that we are really strong people and we can do a lot. How to create and promote and market our production. How to decide to whom we call, to whom we export our tiles, which price we are exporting, how to stop delivery of the raw material outside and asking for industrialists to come to here. This is an important issues together. When we're talking about the finance is everywhere. But how to create it in order to support this small industry with a special rate to enable them to do this industry. I myself, I have a great experience in Egypt. 40 years ago, I was going to the desert and I decided to make a factory, the first factory in Middle East for ceramic tiles with the most modern technology. People at that time, I called the Italian people. Italian was having a great experience, and I start to talk with them to come to make the factory. And when I take the chairman of the SACMI company in Italy, he come to see Mohammed, you bring me in the middle of the desert, and I want to think to make a factory in the middle of the desert. I say, yes. This will be industrial zone. This will be applied from the support, big support from the government. We'll have the gas, we'll have the electricity. At that time, this area was only sand, nothing. But I determined to make this. The thing is coming to Africa, need a big plan, need to support all the initiatives, need a political will from our leaders. And I believe that they have all of them. But these youth people, this experience, these capabilities worldwide can do a lot. I believe with small organization, with small studies, can be done a lot. I think we are capable. And all the problems which we can face, we are going to face a lot of problems, but we are going to solve it. Look at China. China, 40 years ago, it was where? I think some people were based in China 30 or 40 years ago. I visited there 30 years ago, China. But these people are making this experience of the specialized industrial zone and call the multinational companies. And they make some initiative to give them tax exemption for 10 years. They a special program for finance, and they make in each industrial zone school for training or university for education, and they start to train the people to do such an experience. Now, all the multinational companies are happy to stay there. Why? They use the raw material, which is cheap. They has a great added value, and they use their brand name for exportation outside. This is what we have to do now. This is the experience which we have to apply. And this is what we have to promote. It's missing a lot of conferences now to start to market Africa, to market the project of Africa. And that's why I'm asking, if possible, that all the regions decide to make international exhibition for investment. International, it could be also in Egypt. I invite also, if the region can, we have already all the logistics to do this. And this experience can call all the big investors there with all the opportunities for investment and to start to make this marriage together. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, can't get the thing to... So what we'll do is come back to, particularly want to hear more of what Egypt is doing in Africa. But can I go to the next panelist, Madam Bannerman, and your garment business? It's particularly interesting because the old economic orthodoxy was that garment manufacturing was the first rung on the ladder of industrialization. As we saw in particularly Southeast Asia, and we see the thriving industry in Bangladesh, for example. Do you think that it is holding in Ghana and Africa more widely? Do you see garment manufacturing as the first step in the process, or it's not expanding as fast as you would like?
Okay. I'd like to crave your indulgence to introduce myself better. So in 2019, in 2019, the IFC, the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank, named me as one of the top 20 global female business leaders, 4 out of Africa. I'm 1 out of the 4 out of Africa. So my experience in the manufacturing sector, in garments especially, spans over 4 decades. And in 2017, my company was named one of AGOA's success stories. Now, AGOA is the African Growth Opportunities Act, and we were able to export thousands of shirts sold in Ross stores in the US, uniforms for Walgreens and CVS pharmacies, also in the thousands. Now, the intervention of my government, that is a direct action to support manufacturers in the clothing industry, made this possible. And I'm talking about infrastructure development, access to competitive financing. And in short, it was the public-private partnership that made this possible. I think, Mohammed, you touched on that. Having said that, there is also the need for private-private partnership. I'm an executive of the Association of Ghana Industries. I'll come to your question. I'm an executive of the Association of Ghana Industries. And through trade associations or business associations in African countries, we should be able to facilitate the participation of trade shows and so on, to the building of e-commerce platforms to market better what we have in Africa. Now, when we speak about the clothing industry, for my over 4 decades experience in this sector, let's take the US and then China, for instance. Their entry into manufacturing was through the garments and textile industry, for the very obvious reason that thousands of jobs are created within a very short time. And this is what we need to do for our youth in Africa. Also, it's a sector that kickstarts and helps grow and develop other areas of businesses. Let's take the haulage industry, for instance, because there's haulage of goods. there's shipment, there's the handling of goods, there's also transportation for the thousands of workers to and fro from work. There is also laundry. I mean, probably about 10 different areas. So this is one sector that Africa needs to take very seriously, garments and clothing manufacturing. We had a thriving cotton industry. We probably made the mistake of not appreciating external competition and how the forces do work. Sometimes it's deliberate sabotage out of fear, because no market is sitting back for other markets, especially a continent as big as ours. A continent that supplies close to 50% of the world's raw materials. That is how powerful the Africa continent is, really. And seeing that the 18 to 35-year-olds, recent statistics, I think 2022, 2023, indicates that over 64% of these young ones have some form of secondary education. And therefore, in my factory, for instance, it is so easy to provide them with employment. And then if we look at just how much clothing Africa is importing, the worst of our nightmare is the used clothing. But we are importing so much clothing. So one can see what this sector could do to help grow and build economies.
What sort of intervention can stop that? I mean, the second-hand clothing has been banned in several countries, but also importation. I mean, they say the same in Europe, that a lot of clothing is produced in countries with no proper regulation of child labor, and T-shirts are produced for 50 cents a throw and things like that. What can be done to stop the importation of these cheap goods into Africa that's undermining the textile industry in Africa, do you think?
I want us to first look at strengthening the industry in Africa. We need to look at harmonization. I think, Mohammed, you touched on a couple of challenges. Harmonization of trade policies, regulation and standards. We need to make easy the movement of goods. We need to look at renewable energy, for instance. In short, we need to look at how to make cost of production cheaper, so that our goods are more competitive, so that clothing are more competitive. That should discourage importation anyway. So if we want to address a problem, first of all, we need to look at why that problem exists. Clothing must be competitive in pricing. So we need to look at what would make this easy for Africa. And then we can address this. There was an interview, was it from BBC or so? The interviewer spoke to my workers to make them appreciate that the fact that they do purchase used clothing means they are probably buying themselves out of job. So education is critical. The more we educate our people, the more we give them the skills that is necessary, the more as governments, in Ghana, we have various agencies that support the private sector. I am a member of the board of Development Bank Ghana. That's one of the sponsors of this program. We have established a special business development center that supports SMEs. There has to be deliberate action. When there's deliberate action, it is possible to enable the manufacturing sector, in garments and textile, for instance, to thrive. When I started off, I was working with a textile company all the way in South Africa. Unfortunately, they went out of business. I worked with them because I'm a designer. I prefer to create fabrics as well as the designs for uniforms for corporate organizations. I'm not focused only on fashionable clothing, but we mass produce clothing. As I mentioned, shirts to bigger stores in the US and so on. So my concern would be how we reduce the cost of production, how we make easy the movement of goods from one country to the next, and this borders on harmonization and putting trade policies in place. My colleague in automobile mentioned that is so key. And we don't have to reinvent everything. I just returned from China. You mentioned China. I mean, sometimes I take the trouble to do videos and so on. It's just deliberate action, that's all. So Africa, we must appreciate how powerful we are, how wealthy we are, supplying the world's raw materials. the youth, you know, who are trainable with their education and everything else, and then for governments to be deliberate in action. That's all we need. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks. Sebastian, we're kind of in the same business. Well, you're sort of high-class journalism as opposed to sort of regular news reporting journalism. You've built a stellar career on looking at the geopolitics of Africa and the geopolitics of the global scene as well. How about the geopolitics of the African continental free trade area? Madam Ambassador said earlier the WTO has had its problems, and a lot of people assign those problems within the WTO, sort of nations fighting geopolitics on the floor of the WTO and so on. How do you think it's going in the African continental free trade area at the moment? Do you see African geopolitics intervening there?
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. My general view is that we are accelerating too slowly. The image I would like to give you is we're in a SUV going up a mountain, and we are sort of going up a mountain, but we are going too slowly. And we often, in our actions, don't properly think about the reaction. To every action, there's something called an opposite reaction. We are talking about after, as if it's in the vacuum, as if those who came here 500 years ago, who brought manufactured products. Let us not forget this. The very first interaction Europe had with Africa was not about ideology, it was not about flowers. It was about Europe bringing manufactured products to Africa and taking raw materials out. That is the basic fundamental relationship that undergirded colonialism and slavery. Till we understand that whole point, we may still be in that car, Kenyans arguing with Tanzanians, Ghanaians in one political party arguing with another, and while we are doing all of this, basically China, India, the European Union and others are sort of not wanting this car to go up the mountain. So I think everything all the other panelists have said is quite good, but I'm impatient. I just think, frankly, if you go out there in the streets today and you speak to normal people who, you know, do normal jobs, there's a sense that we are growing too slowly. We are not growing enough to absorb the youth who are coming out of universities. Today, for instance, I hear the University of Ghana is having a graduation ceremony. We should ask ourselves, how many of the thousands of people who are graduating today will have jobs in 3 months or in 6 months or in a year? So for me, I think that younger, maybe it's a generational thing, but I am extremely impatient that a lot of the things we are talking about, we've discussed it, we need to remove the border guards at the borders, we need to sort this out, we go around in circles. And I think to the extent that these dialogues are useful, that we all have to live here, and to the extent that we have some influence on people who make decisions, whether in the private sector or in government, we have to urge us on, because frankly, the geopolitics of the next 10 years is worse than the geopolitics of the last 30. I mean, China is growing at a rate that, I mean, it's unbelievable. India is now just about to also join China on the global stage. The European Union is much more integrated today than it was when the Maastricht Treaty was signed, right? And Africa, we are getting there, but I'm just adding the footnote that we shouldn't talk about after as if it's a welcome news to the world. It isn't. It is the first time the Africans in 500 years are saying that, no, we are going to work together and try and lift our people up. So we should expect that there will be pushback.
Sebastian, to achieve that goal of giving it a real push now, the unity agenda, what one thing could the leaders on the continent do that would make a real difference in practical terms, in terms of policy or meeting together to endorse it and to agree on a plan? What would really change the game at this stage?
You know, I believe that before we even get to policy, we have to change our mindsets. It's a fundamental change of mindset. If we begin to see ourselves as being in one bus, going up a hill, in that bus there will be Muslims, in that bus there will be women, in that bus there will be conservatives, liberals, gay people, straight people, a whole host of people in that bus, but they are all Africans. There will be North Africans, there will be Southern Africans. And if in that bus we are all determined to work together across these divides to push this bus to that summit, then we'll be fine. So I don't jump to policy. I think, look, some of us in this room had ancestors who were in school 100 years ago in Europe. We've known these problems. These problems are well known. But the problem is that we are too divided. It makes no sense. It's like the example you give to Ambassador Amina Mohammed. We are in a bus. The bus is decelerating. We are off a cliff. There are about 100 million people without jobs in that bus. And instead of focusing on that bus, we are arguing in that bus. Who is green and who is red and who is blue and who speaks with an accent? It's nonsense. So I think that before we even get to policy, we as Africans have to begin to see ourselves as brothers and sisters who are stuck on the same bus. And therefore, when the driver is driving, instead of the rest of us in the car criticizing the driver and distracting the driver from driving properly, we should give constructive criticism. And when the driver also is tired, they shouldn't also throw us over the cliff. They should get out of that seat and let somebody else do it. So I think that it's that brotherhood that we need, and that's...
Thank you very much, Sebastian. I can see that the MC is getting ready to wind things up. Can I finally say, you've been an absolutely brilliant panel, all of you, in such a varied range of expertise and operations. And I think, representative of everything that the continent has to offer this free trade area. Please applaud this, and thanks very much. And nothing now stands between you and the festivities later in the afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. A round of applause for our esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. At this juncture, I'd like to call on President of the African American Institute, Kofi Apenteng. He will give us highlights of the draft outcome document, which will serve as a basis for the compact document for tomorrow's presidential dialogue. Mr. Kofi Apenteng, if you're around. Thank you very much. A round of applause for our esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Apenteng, the floor is yours.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to present the draft outcomes document of the Business and Policy Leaders Dialogue for the African Prosperity Dialogues 2024, the Pedwasi Summit. As with the prior dialogues, it was presented under the patronage of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of Ghana. Here are the key recommendations from the retreat. Under the theme, Doing Business Differently, adding value to what we produce. African countries should bolster their trade facilitation efforts. Simplifying customs procedures, reducing trade barriers, and standardizing regulations will significantly enhance Africa's integration into the regional and global value chains. African countries should intensify their efforts towards industrialization and economic diversification. Encouraging diversified and value-added manufacturing can propel African nations up the value chain. African governments should provide an enabling environment to encourage, promote, and support women in trade initiatives. Women constitute a substantial portion of the African population and workforce, possessing unique skills and entrepreneurial spirit. Involving women in intra-African trade not only promotes gender equality, but also enhances the overall efficiency and resilience of economies. Empowering women entrepreneurs, facilitating their access to markets, and fostering an inclusive trade environment are steps in realizing the untapped economic benefits that women bring to the table, ensuring a more comprehensive and sustainable intra-African trade ecosystem. African countries should actively involve their private sector and in integrating their economies into regional and global value chains. Governments can attract investments and facilitate technology transfer by collaborating with multinational corporations and cultivating an enabling environment for local and foreign businesses. African countries should actualize a regional approach and leverage opportunities to develop a regional hub for recycling. This regional initiative can significantly contribute to the value chain of waste management, reduction, mitigation of environmental impacts, and reuse. While fostering a culture of responsible resource management across the continent and bolstering intra-African trade. Unleashing Africa's food and agribusiness potential. Under that theme, African countries need to invest more in agriculture. Enhanced investments in agriculture are imperative for African countries. This involves substantial support for smallholder farmers, granting them access to modern farming techniques, high-quality seeds, fertilizers, irrigation systems, and essential agricultural infrastructure. Augmenting agricultural productivity stands as a pivotal measure to bolster food production. African governments ought to incentivize financial institutions to support the private sector involved in agribusiness, enabling them to access finance and capital. African governments should create a conducive environment for the private sector to enhance the value of agricultural products. Through the promotion of value addition and the encouragement of agro-processing industries, African countries can generate increased employment opportunities and elevate the value of the agricultural goods, thereby making substantial contributions to economic growth. African governments ought to encourage more youth entrepreneurship in agriculture. This can be achieved by providing support through mentorship programs, startup incubators, and facilitating access to networks. Such initiatives can stimulate innovation and foster the establishment of new agribusiness ventures. Under the theme, Getting on the Global Value Chain of Africa's Natural Resources, African governments should incentivize financial institutions to increase their support for businesses in the manufacturing sector and to charge favorable interest rates. These institutions can provide loans to manufacturers for capital investment, expanding production facilities, or acquiring machinery and equipment. Governments in oil-rich African nations should actively foster the development of integrated refineries within their private sectors. These refineries should feature interconnected units for both crude oil refining and petrochemical production, thereby enhancing operational efficiency and ensuring long-term sustainability. African governments must prioritize adopting and implementing comprehensive industrial policies to accelerate development in natural resource sectors. Establishing clear policies provides a roadmap for industrial development, outlining objectives, strategies, and necessary mechanisms to enhance and foster economic linkages. African countries need to intensify efforts to add value to their natural resources and commodities. Emphasizing value addition involves processing raw materials within the country's borders, going beyond mere exportation of raw materials. This strategy involves refining, manufacturing, or producing finished or semi-finished goods, often leading to higher prices in global markets. Under the theme Accelerating Intra-African Trade Through Enhanced Transportation and Logistics, African countries should collectively leverage public-private partnerships and arrangements to enhance their investment in the development of efficient and adequate transport infrastructure and services across borders. African countries should expedite the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area to unleash the economic potential within value chains and stimulate intra-African trade. The AFCFTA has the capacity to unlock an estimated US $3.2 trillion in intra-African trade, enabling countries to specialize in specific segments of the value chain while allowing tariff-free movement of these segments across participating nations. African countries should foster collaborations between governments and the private sector to invest in digital technology and initiatives that bolster trade facilitation and promote the development of e-commerce. African governments should strive to implement visa-free border countries to enhance intra-African trade. Under the theme Critical Enablers of Single Market Success, Finance, Innovation, and Technology, African governments, working in collaboration with central banks, financial institutions, the private sector, and key stakeholders, must actively work towards currency harmonization and strive to ensure the interoperability and standardization of payment systems across the continent. The potential benefits derived from achieving interoperability between these systems are extensive. African countries should strengthen their partnerships with the private sector and international collaborators to boost investments in technologies vital for supporting payment systems. This includes nurturing the development and uptake of innovative financial technologies, encompassing mobile payments, digital wallets, and online payment platforms. African governments, in partnership with the African Union and regional economic communities, must develop an integrated payment services market at the continental scale. This undertaking necessitates support and guidance from both the national authorities and the continental and regional bodies, enabling practical direction, coordination of national initiatives, and financial support for critical components. African governments working in collaboration with financial institutions, the private sector, and key stakeholders must actively invest in innovation through resource venture capital with private capital to leverage public finance in public-private partnership architecture. The retreat expressed its gratitude to His Excellency Nana Addo Akufo-Addo and the Government of Ghana for hosting the Podwasi retreat. It also appreciated all of its sponsors and its partners, including the AFCFTA Secretariat and APN, for jointly organizing this retreat in partnership with the sponsors and partners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for Kofi Apenteng. He's president of the Africa America Institute. We're just about wrapping up, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, but before we do, allow me to welcome on stage Her Excellency, Chief of Staff, Madam Frima Opare, to deliver the closing remarks.
Your Excellencies, the Chief of Staff, to the General Secretary of the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, representatives of heads of states, ministers of states and deputies, heads of international institutions, chairmen and CEOs, other business executives, distinguished stakeholders of the AFCFTA, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and privilege to be invited to the 2024 Africa Prosperity Dialogue and to address you on the theme, Delivering Prosperity in Africa, Produce, Add Value, Trade. The discussion, which began with the maiden edition of these dialogues last year, has once again expressed the collective desire within an African continent to guarantee and to secure the prosperity of the continent in a sustainable way. This dialogue, occurring for the second time, is therefore not merely a meeting of leaders, but a crucial milestone in our journey towards reshaping Africa's economic landscape to become the largest single market in the world. Undoubtedly, the AFCFTA is a game changer and a critical enabler for Africa's dream of achieving single markets. The AFCFTA is not only a strategic anchor, but a bold initiative for our women, our youth, and for businesses operating in Africa. We can look forward to an Africa with more decent jobs for our people, improved welfare systems, and a better quality of life for every individual in a sustained manner. This is why a gathering such as this is very crucial. It is obvious to all of us gathered here at the Peduasi Lodge that the annual Africa Prosperity Dialogue are here to stay. As expressed yesterday, the President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, is delighted to be the host and hopes that this historic collaboration with the host of strategic partners will grow from strength to strength. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, there are some questions that need answers, driven by deep thought and commitment at all levels of governance. What is Africa doing right? And what must Africa keep doing right? What are the low-hanging fruits that Africa must leverage to achieve the desired goals and targets? I believe that the recognition of the connection between business sector and political leaders at this dialogue answers the questions I pose. It is a formidable way to ensure a smoother and coordinated manner of setting up value chains in natural resource development and agro-processing. Again, the setbacks we have experienced as a result of declining levels of investment in our continent shows that we will have to work on deepening our actions, driven at ensuring an even more conducive business climate. Not only do we need sound and secure legal and institutional frameworks, but structures that make investments, especially from within Africa, more lucrative and rewarding. I believe there are still gray areas, and the dialogue should emphasize on more being done. The way forward, perhaps, is for Africa to invest more in building the potentials of our workforce to take on challenges on their own. This workforce must have an inherent desire to create prosperity through value addition, increased productivity, and trade. We are all well aware of the ever-increasing challenge of the unemployment we face in many of our nations. The percentage of young people who finish school on an annual basis and yet cannot find jobs in the public sector keeps scaring us. We are asking the private sector to assist in training and to give them an opportunity to grow in the needed skills that make them more employable and also as entrepreneurs. Again, investment in capacity building means that more people can deepen their understanding on the importance and relevance of the vast potential that the continent holds. Until that happens, it remains a challenge to keep providing opportunities that will not be realized and utilized. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the outcome document that has just been read speaks to the collective commitment, responsibility, and expectations of all of us gathered here, and by extension to the larger constituency of Africans out there. That if we are to be prosperous and make the free movement of people, goods, and services in Africa a reality, then we must, with urgency, get these things done. We must industrialize, we must add value, and we must produce and consume what we produce. We must specifically refine more of our petroleum products rather than exporting them in their raw state. We must grow the grains we eat and process the foods we buy from the groceries. We must be able to buy and sell across Africa without using a third and foreign currency. That we must be able to use our mobile phones to make calls to other member states without roaming charges and send money in our local currencies to complete a transaction online in other member states. That is the exciting new Africa that we are all committing to. It is my hope that when the heads of state and other senior public sector heads and leaders of businesses meet tomorrow for the presidential and business executive dialogue to discuss the outcome of this, the outcome document, they will enrich it further and turn it into PEDUASI 2024 Compact, which will bind all of us and be presented to the African Union for necessary action. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your commitment and dedication for the success of this two-day retreat. Together, let us embark on this journey towards a prosperous future where Africa shines brightly. Long live the Africa Prosperity Dialogue. Long live Africa Rising Agenda. Long live Africa. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Her Excellency Akosua Fremont Pare, Oseyo Pare, Chief of Staff. Many thanks for your closing remarks. And so this is how we draw the curtain on today's session. Various speakers throughout today's session have outlined the way forward in achieving the single market. A lot of offerings have been made. One of them, the need for African countries to invest more in agric. That can never be underemphasized given the potential benefits. So thank you all very, very, very much. And as you're aware, we do have a pre-dinner cocktail at Kempinski, as well as the Africa Prosperity Championship Awards and Presidential Gala Dinner, all at Kempinski. But do remember that those who have been invited should make their way there. It is strictly by invitation. We do have a few invites here, so if you hear your name, kindly go to the registration desk and pick up your invitation card. So Lassine Kone, Harriet Singh, Ellie Hinney, John Omo, Olumide Ogunfowora, I apologize for the mispronunciation, His Excellency Jakaya Mrisho Keketwe, Dr. Precious Moloi Mosepe, Alpha Ibrahim Sise, Rosemary Beryl Archer, Josh Siao, Linda Ampa, Angela Wamola, and Uziel Indaji Gama. Uziel Indaji Mana, rather. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. So, this is where we draw the curtains on today's program. As I indicated earlier, if you have been invited to the pre-dinner cocktail as well as the Champions Awards and Presidential Gala Dinner at the Kempinski Hotel, kindly make your way there. It is an invite-only event happening from 6 p.m. Through to 10 p.m. My name is Araba Kumsin. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting this session. Hopefully we'll meet tomorrow at the Presidential Dialogue, same venue, same time, 9 o'clock here at the Pedro Arce Lodge. Good evening.